Welcome to Billionaire Success Lessons, the channel where powerful stories turn into life-changing wisdom. Today, we are diving into the remarkable journey of Larry Ellison, a man who did not begin life with comfort, certainty, or a clear path to greatness. He was not handed a perfect opportunity. He did not grow up inside wealth, prestige, or security. In many ways, his life began with instability and unanswered questions. Larry Ellison was born in New York City, then adopted and raised by his aunt, an uncle in Chicago. He later attended the University of Illinois, and briefly studied at the University of Chicago before leaving school, and moving to California to work as a programmer. That beginning matters, because when people see Larry Ellison now, they often see the billionaire, the Oracle founder, the giant of enterprise software, and one of the most influential names in technology. But what made him extraordinary was not simply intelligence. It was hunger, it was restlessness. It was the refusal to accept an ordinary future just because his early life looked uncertain. Sometimes the most powerful success stories do not begin with an advantage. They begin with an ache, a dissatisfaction, and a deep belief that life must hold something bigger. Larry Ellison's early life was shaped as much by emotional distance as by economic limitation. He grew up in Chicago, raised not by the parents who brought him into the world, but by relatives who became his family. That kind of beginning leaves a mark on a person. It can make someone feel rejected, disconnected, or driven to prove that they matter. In Larry Ellison's case, it seems to have created an edge inside him, a deep internal force that would later fuel his ambition. He was intelligent, curious, and unwilling to stay boxed in by conventional expectations. He attended college, but he did not follow the traditional academic route to success. He left the University of Illinois, briefly attended the University of Chicago, and then moved west, searching not for comfort, but for possibility. That move to California was more than a change of location. It was a decision to bet on himself without guarantees. Many people wait until life feels safe before they move forward. Larry Ellison moved before safety arrived. That is one of the earliest lessons in his story. Sometimes progress does not come when the path is clear. Sometimes it begins when you decide to keep walking even while the future is still hidden. In California, Larry Ellison entered the world of programming at a time when computing was still evolving, and the future of the industry had not yet been fully written. He worked as a computer programmer, and eventually spent time at where he gained experience that would shape the rest of his life. These years were critical because they gave him more than a paycheck. They gave him exposure to the real world of technology, real systems, real business needs, and real limitations. He was not learning through theory alone. He was learning through work. And that is often where great builders are formed. Not in abstract ambition, but in direct contact with problems that need solving. Larry Ellison began to see something profound. Data would matter. Information would matter. The organizations that could store, organize, and retrieve information efficiently would hold enormous power. He also encountered ideas influenced by relational database theory, including the work of Edgar F. Codd, which inspired the vision that would later become Oracle. What separated Ellison from many others was not simply that he understood technology. It was that he saw the commercial future inside it. He could sense that this was not just engineering. This was a new business revolution waiting to happen. That vision led to one of the most important turning points in modern business history. In 1977, Larry Ellison co-founded a company with Bob Miner and Ed Oates. The company began as software development laboratories, long before the world knew the name Oracle. It was a small beginning, fragile and uncertain like so many startups are at the start. There were no guarantees that this company would survive, no promise that it would become a global force, and no assurance that Ellison's bold vision would be proven right. But that is how many great companies begin. They begin with a small group of people who can already see tomorrow, while the rest of the world is still trapped inside today. Larry Ellison believed that relational databases would become essential to business computing, and he was willing to build a company around that conviction. That took courage, because entrepreneurship is not only about creating something, it is about committing to an idea before the world validates it. It is about carrying belief through uncertainty, and holding on when results come slowly. Larry Ellison did not start Oracle from a position of safety. He started it from a position of conviction. And that makes all the difference. In the earliest days, Oracle was not a glamorous empire. It was a small company trying to prove that it belonged in a competitive and rapidly changing industry. The team was building products in a market that was still taking shape. And Larry Ellison had to do what almost every founder must do in the beginning: sell the future before the future has fully arrived. This is one of the hardest parts of building anything new. You are asking customers, investors, and employees to trust a vision they cannot yet fully see. You are asking people to believe not only in the product, but in the possibility behind it. Larry Ellison had that rare founder's energy, the ability to push a big idea with relentless force. He was bold, persuasive, and intensely competitive. He understood that superior technology alone is not enough. You also need positioning, storytelling, urgency, and the willingness to challenge larger rivals. While many people around him were cautious, Ellison was aggressive. He did not want Oracle to be a minor company in a niche corner of software. He wanted it to dominate. That level of ambition can look dangerous. Sometimes it is, but when combined with vision and execution, it can also change an entire industry. As Oracle grew, Larry Ellison began turning his startup into one of the most important names in database technology. The company went public in 1986, and by 1987, Oracle had become the world's largest database management company. That kind of rise is extraordinary. But rapid success can create a dangerous illusion. It can make a founder feel unstoppable. It can create the impression that growth will continue naturally, and that momentum alone can carry a business forever. But life rarely allows that kind of easy story. Success often attracts new pressures, larger expectations, stronger competitors, and hidden weaknesses that growth had temporarily covered up. Larry Ellison was brilliant, but brilliance does not remove risk. In fact, sometimes rapid early success creates the conditions for a future crisis, because the company begins scaling faster than its discipline. This is one of the timeless lessons in business. And in life, winning early is not the same as lasting. Growth can impress people. Survival earns respect, and Larry Ellison was about to learn that success becomes truly meaningful only after it has survived a storm strong enough to destroy it. That storm came in the early 1990s. Oracle hit a painful period of disappointing earnings and restructuring, while competition intensified. Multiple accounts also describe a severe internal crisis around Oracle's business practices and financial reporting during that era, a moment that brought the company dangerously close to collapse. For Larry Ellison, this was not a small setback. This was the kind of moment that can destroy a founder's reputation. shatter confidence, and turn a once celebrated rise into a cautionary tale. It would have been easy for people to assume that Oracle's best days were over. It would have been easy for Ellison himself to retreat, blame others, or become defined by failure. But some leaders are revealed most clearly not when everything works, but when everything starts breaking. This was one of those moments. Larry Ellison had to confront the difference between aggressive ambition and durable leadership. He had to face hard truths, fix what was broken, and rebuild trust. The easy story would have ended there, with a dramatic rise followed by a painful fall. But Larry Ellison was not finished. What came next would prove that one of the greatest differences between ordinary people and extraordinary builders is this: extraordinary builders learn how to come back. Recovery did not happen because Larry Ellison suddenly became cautious or timid. It happened because he adapted. That is one of the most important qualities in his story. He was fierce, opinionated, and deeply competitive, but he was also capable of changing course when reality demanded it. Oracle restructured, corrected its mistakes, and continued building. The company did not merely survive the crisis. It regained strength, expanded its influence, and eventually became a dominant force in enterprise software. This part of the story matters so much because many people admire confidence, but confidence alone is not enough. What really sustains greatness is the ability to survive humiliation, rework your thinking, and keep moving forward after the world has seen you stumble. Larry Ellison's comeback shows that failure does not always mean the end of the dream. Sometimes it is the moment that burns away arrogance and forces a person to build on stronger foundations. The truth is, setbacks often reveal whether someone was in love with applause or in love with the mission. Larry Ellison proved that he was still committed to the mission. He did not just want to be admired. He wanted to win for the long term. And long-term winners always learn how to recover. One reason Larry Ellison remained such a powerful force is that he never thought small. He did not build Oracle as a single product success story. He built it as a platform for power, scale, and strategic control. Over time, Oracle expanded beyond databases into broader enterprise software, infrastructure, cloud services, and other major areas of business technology. This capacity for reinvention is one of the strongest themes in his journey. Many founders are able to build one great chapter, but they cannot evolve beyond it. They become prisoners of their first success. Larry Ellison did not allow that to happen. He kept pushing Oracle into new arenas, often in ways that were controversial, aggressive, or underestimated at first. Whether people loved his style or criticized it, they could not ignore his willingness to think in larger systems. He seemed to understand something vital. If you want to remain relevant for decades, you cannot simply defend yesterday's victory. You have to build tomorrow's relevance before it becomes obvious to everyone else. That ability to keep shifting forward, even after massive success, is one of the reasons his story continues to matter to entrepreneurs, leaders, and anyone trying to build something that lasts. Larry Ellison's journey also teaches a deeper emotional lesson about identity. For many people, early rejection or instability becomes a wound that limits their confidence. For others, it becomes fuel. Larry Ellison appears to have taken the second path. He developed an intense drive, an unwillingness to be ordinary, and a refusal to let the world define the size of his future. That kind of hunger can be dangerous if it is reckless, but it can be transformational if it is harnessed. In Ellison's case, it became the force behind bold bets. enormous resilience, and relentless ambition. He was not built to live small. He was built to challenge, provoke, compete, and conquer. Of course, that kind of personality is not always comfortable for the people around him. Great ambition often comes with friction, but that is part of what makes his story so compelling. He was not trying to become a polished symbol of approval. He was trying to build something undeniable. And sometimes the people who change industries are not the ones who fit neatly into expectations. They are the ones who are too driven to stay contained by them. Larry Ellison's life reminds us that the traits that make someone difficult in one setting may become the very traits that make them formidable in another. As the years passed, Oracle became one of the defining companies in enterprise technology, and Larry Ellison became one of the most visible figures in modern business. He led the company as CEO from its founding in 1977 until 2014, and after stepping down from that role, he remained Oracle's executive chairman and chief technology officer. That continuity is rare. It means his influence did not disappear after the startup years or after the company reached maturity. He remained deeply connected to Oracle's direction, strategy, and evolution. This is important because it tells us that Larry Ellison was never simply interested in launching a company and walking away with the rewards. He wanted to shape its future across generations of technology. Oracle's later movement into cloud, AI, and modern enterprise infrastructure reflects that enduring strategic involvement. Great builders do not just create something and stop caring. They stay engaged in the long arc of what they have built. They keep asking what the next chapter should be. Larry Ellison's long tenure shows that success is not only about arrival, it is also about stewardship. It is about staying sharp long enough to guide your creation through new worlds you could not fully see on day one. But beyond business strategy and corporate milestones, Larry Ellison's story carries a more personal lesson. He did not become Larry Ellison because life was smooth. He became Larry Ellison because he learned how to convert adversity into edge. That is something so many people miss when they study success. They think the goal is to avoid hardship. But in reality, hardship often becomes the training ground of strength. The question is not whether pain enters your life. It will. The real question is what you do with it. Do you let it shrink you, or do you let it sharpen you? Larry Ellison's path suggests that adversity can become an engine if you refuse to waste it. An uncertain childhood, an untraditional academic path, the pressure of building in a competitive industry, the humiliation of corporate crisis, the constant battle to stay relevant, all of that could have broken him. Instead, it became part of his power. That is why his story resonates beyond technology. It speaks to anyone who has ever felt underestimated, displaced, or uncertain. It reminds us that a difficult beginning is not a final verdict. Sometimes it is just the first draft of a much bigger story. There is also a lesson in the way Larry Ellison approached scale. He did not think in tiny ambitions. He thought in categories, in industries, in systems, in dominance. Not everyone needs to think that way, but there is wisdom in studying it. So many people limit themselves before life ever gets the chance to challenge them. They choose small because small feels safer. Larry Ellison's life argues for something bolder. It argues for taking your ideas seriously, for seeing possibility where others see risk, and for staying mentally larger than the obstacles in front of you. Of course, bold thinking alone means nothing without execution, but execution without boldness often leads to a life that is efficient and forgettable. Ellison's success came from the marriage of both. He thought big and pushed hard. He expected to compete at the highest level. And then he worked in a way that matched that expectation. That may be one of the most practical lessons from his journey. Your standards shape your effort. Your vision shapes your stamina. If you believe your life is meant for something substantial, you will endure differently. You will prepare differently. You will refuse to surrender too early. What makes Larry Ellison especially fascinating is that his success was not built on perfection. It was built on force, correction, learning, reinvention, and persistence. He made bold moves. He faced serious setbacks. He built, stumbled, recovered, and kept expanding. In many ways, that is a far more useful story than a clean, polished narrative of effortless brilliance. Real people need real stories. They need stories that admit pressure, ego, mistakes, conflict, and difficulty, because that is what real life looks like. Larry Ellison's journey tells us that you do not need a flawless path to create an extraordinary outcome. You need direction. You need endurance. You need the courage to keep playing the long game even after painful losses. Too many people think a mistake disqualifies them. Too many people assume that if they stumble badly, they have lost their chance. But Larry Ellison's life says otherwise. A setback can become a second beginning, if you are strong enough to learn from it. A crisis can become a turning point, if you do not let shame freeze your movement. That is not just business wisdom. That is life wisdom. So what is the deepest lesson from the story of Larry Ellison? It is not merely that he became rich. Wealth is the visible outcome, but it is not the full meaning of the journey. The deeper lesson is that greatness often comes from people who refuse to let their beginnings define their limits. Larry Ellison was not born into a clear destiny. He built one. He moved through uncertainty, studied the world carefully, saw opportunity before most people recognized it, and then pursued that vision with uncommon intensity. He faced failure, criticism, pressure, and risk, and he kept going. He kept building. He kept evolving. That is the kind of story that matters, because it reminds us that success is not some magical gift granted to a chosen few. More often, it is the result of clarity, obsession, resilience, and the willingness to keep fighting after the easy version of the dream has died. Larry Ellison's life teaches us that ambition becomes powerful when it is matched by endurance. Vision becomes transformative when it survives disappointment, and a person becomes unforgettable when they learn how to turn adversity into fuel instead of surrender. And maybe that is the best way to leave this story here on Billionaire Success. Lessons. Larry Ellison is not inspiring because he lived a comfortable life. He is inspiring because he proved that discomfort does not have to be the end of the story. A child with an uncertain beginning can grow into a man who helps reshape an industry. A college dropout can build one of the most powerful software companies in the world. A founder standing in the middle of crisis can still come back stronger. And a life full of friction can still become a life of enormous impact. That is why stories like this matter. They remind us that success is not reserved for people with perfect beginnings, perfect personalities, or perfect timing. It belongs to those who keep building, keep learning, and keep moving when others stop. Larry Ellison's journey is not just the story of Oracle. It is the story of what can happen when relentless vision meets relentless resilience. And for anyone listening right now, maybe that is the message worth carrying forward into your own life. Your circumstances may shape your beginning, but your decisions, your courage, and your persistence can still shape your ending.